Well, I don't know. Is that what you guys are used to?
Payroll?
No.
I think
Somebody-
he wants, I think he wants a treat. Yeah.
Somebody barking at you all the time? Isn't that what it's like when you're in public service?
You know, I never looked at it that way, but I suppose you could look at it that way.
Okay, we are ready to go.
All right, we're at 4 o'clock. I will call us to order.
I'll make a motion to adopt the
The agenda.
agenda with the one addition. That was brought to council late this afternoon.
I will need a mover and a seconder.
Second motion.
Anybody wish to speak to that motion?
No.
I will call for the question. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I have another addition. I make a resolution or put on the agenda the resolution that council will forego COLA for the 2022 budget year for the COLA increase on the indemnity and put it back into general
Revenue.
revenue.
Do we have a seconder for that? Bobby? Anybody wish to speak to that?
I think it just shows goodwill from
It's just
our
on the
side,
agenda.
and it's not a big ticket item, but at least we're doing what much we can without taking a pay cut more or less. So I think it's a good thing to do right now.
I'll call for the question.
Well, this is just to put on the
This
agenda.
is just to put it on the
Yeah,
agenda.
okay, yeah, same with the,
With the fireworks.
with the fire.
Yeah, okay, good.
Motions will come later.
So we need to call for the question and for those two additions.
I will call for the question for those two additions. All in favor?
Okay.
Unanimous?
Okay, so the next item then under delegations is
Daniel.
Burns Mandel.
May as well tell them his date.
Yeah, we are live on YouTube right now, Daniel, too, just so you know.
All right. Sounds good.
No more dog barking.
Yeah, we'll try to keep that under control here with the land of working from home and all that fun stuff that everybody gets to do. I'm just gonna shut my phone off here too, just in case it starts going. There we go. All righty. So yeah, I'm not sure where we wanted to start. I had a few things kind of on my agenda, and I know that I believe council's got a few questions to ask of myself for Burns Mandel. I got Ryan has joined us there as well too. So maybe we can start, or should we start with the Chater low pressure sewer project? Is that fair? I think probably it's been a little while since we gave you guys the update on that, and we could maybe have a little bit of a discussion on it.
I think I recommend that he gives us an update so people are already inquiring where we're at.
Well, it refreshes one's memory.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an inquiry last night, Dan, and timing is perfect. You'll give us an update today, so.
Okay, excellent. So we have completed the design. The drawings were submitted to yourself, to council, and to services board. Ryan, I don't know how long, a couple, it's been probably 3 weeks ago, maybe.
That was right before Christmas.
Just before Christmas, the design was submitted. So we were and are seeking some feedback or any comments that you may have on the drawing and the design as was submitted. Services board did get back to us today with a few comments. I didn't actually get a copy. Ryan, you said you got that from Ranveer from services board with any comments that they had.
Yeah, I'll send a copy to you and to Donna just so you can see what they said, but it was pretty minor, if anything.
Okay. So essentially, design from our perspective is more or less complete. We were still waiting on hydro for the lift station service, and they did get back to us this week with the estimate of what it was going to cost to bring 3-phase in for the site, so we can update our cost estimate with that. Ryan's also working on updating that cost estimate now based on final design, final pipe sizes, and linear feet of pipe to go in. Ryan, when do you think we'll have that piece complete for?
Should be shortly here. I'm just waiting for confirmation on a couple of prices from some contractors, just trying to figure out what the market conditions are doing right now.
Okay. So that basically will then, I think that kind of concludes our portion of the final design will be once we provide you with the any revisions from the services board comments and our revised Class A cost estimate. So I would expect that would be shortly. However, Ryan's was wife's due on last Tuesday on the 25th, so he might be on a little bit of missing in action here for a few days once the baby shows up to get that all finalized. But it's kind of right imminent pressing to get the updated or the finalized cost estimate to you. I don't know if there's any questions on that. Kind of is it just a bit of an update, or have you had a chance to review drawings at all? Does council have any comments, questions, concerns? I think I'll touch base on the lift station location because I know that's one that's probably there's been some question or discussion about, but other than that, maybe.
I've got a question, Dan, on, so we're, because you're in live stream, I'm sure Cheater people and other residents can listen to this conversation. So we're placing the sewer line on the east side on an easement for now, going north. Then you're gonna jump Main Street and put that lift station in the same vicinity where the existing lift station is. Is that correct?
Yeah, what we've proposed there, like when we originally met and based the original work on was our assumption was that going on the east side in that corner of Laurie and Main probably made sense from the fact that we wanted to run that was the only place that we have room to run the force main was on the east side. So we thought we would put the lift station in the corner. We felt like the landowner that wants to continue to do further development would be open to subdividing off and selling off a corner. So we thought that just was easy and it made sense throughout the design process and discussions with the developer and yourself. There were some concerns on timing, so we looked at going over to the west side, and ultimately that's where we ended up with it on the design, is adjacent to the stormwater pump out lift station. And looking at, could it go back to the east? It could, but we're of the opinion that if we've got approval from the other landowner already, that it makes more sense to have both of them on one piece of property and then have one service only coming in that the municipality has, because otherwise we'll have to have two electrical services, and forever you'll be paying for basic electrical charges. You paid to have a separate service. So it made sense to us to have them on one property. In time, hopefully, then you'll be able to subdivide off that little corner on the west side, and both would be contained within that same piece of property with one electrical service going to it. So
Is that water pump station, Dan, is it set up for 3-phase now?
No, it only ever had single phase because that was all that was available when it was installed.
But would that be changed over then in time?
Yeah,
Would that be a recommendation?
as part of this design, we've proposed that it would be upgraded to a 3-phase service so it would need a new pump and a new panel, but then you would have one panel that controls both lift stations. There'd be a backup generator there that would control both lift stations. So it'll all be contained on one parcel. And then we're going to, instead of having duplicate infrastructure, you're going to have one service, one panel that would provide service to both lift stations. There will be
3-phase is cheaper too, right? Cheaper source of power.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you get it there.
Yeah. So there will be some extra cost to upgrade that panel and pump, which we're going to break out as a separate cost, because I think that it wouldn't be fair to have that included as kind of as a local improvement for the lift station. But I think that makes the most sense if I look at it strictly from a long-term infrastructure ownership perspective, is to have those on the same title, the same property, and not have duplicate infrastructure sitting there.
As a maintenance aspect, it makes more sense to me as well.
Yeah. And I believe that that pump has been in for 15 years-ish, and I don't know that it's ever been serviced. So it probably is time that that's pulled and serviced. So, you know, it's a pretty critical piece of infrastructure there to maintain groundwater for the specifically those, I'm not sure how many's there, about 8 lots or whatever along Reed Street. So I think that, you know, while the pricing would be separated out, I think it's the right thing to do from a municipal perspective.
Dan, when I asked you the other day, I may as well give council a heads up on the license. That's the reason I called you, but then you mentioned also one of the reasons you put it on the west side, or that also is potential odor. Can you basically explain that, Orion? I'm gonna say a potential odor, not guaranteed, but just explain that to council. And that, when the minute you mentioned that to me, I kind of thought, well, that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, and that was one of our concerns when it was on the east side, is that, you know, our lift station does have odor. There is gases generated from sewage, so there is always odor emitting from a lift station. So the further away that you can push that from any residential areas, the better. So our feeling was that, looking at what the developer had for a future layout on the east side, he was going to have a couple of backyards backing onto that piece where it was going to go, so it would be in a lot closer proximity. So pushing it further across onto the west side should ultimately reduce, you know, and hopefully eliminate potential odor concerns for council down the road.
So you don't see a problem with it being on the west side with the residents that are already established there?
No, because there's quite a distance between the two, plus there's a buffer, there's trees, vegetation in between. I wouldn't anticipate that. You know, we do lift stations that are adjacent to two lots. You know, these are bigger lots, but getting it a little bit further away is definitely a bonus or a positive.
Yep.
Sure. Like during the construction, when we're done, whatever, we also like can look into putting some trees around there. Like make a little, you know,
Yep.
fast growing stuff, and then mix a little bit nice, sort of separated from the rest of the homes there.
So we are building up that corner a little bit. You know, there's going to be a lot of material that comes out when we dig the lift station to put it in. There'll also be material that comes out during construction when they're digging. So there'd be an area they could dispose of some of that material to kind of build that northwest corner up a little bit, and level it off. And that's part of our design. A little bit of gravel coming in there, so a service road that would provide all-weather access to both of those lift stations as well. So, yeah, and that would kind of clean that corner up. And yeah, we haven't included any plantings or anything in there, but it is something that you definitely could do, is to establish some trees and some vegetation in that corner to kind of provide a little bit more of a buffer for it. Yeah. So I'm firmly of the opinion that's the right place for it to go, to have that together.
So your end result for numbers from the contractors and the hydro and all that stuff is a projected time now of?
I'm looking at Ryan now online there. See what's he actually,
No pressure, Ryan.
what's he thinking?
Did I hear next week? Is that what I heard?
Probably will be close. What I was waiting for too is the electrical side. I need to get some costing on that, but I wanted to just confirm we're for sure west side before he gives me some of his numbers on that side of things. So as long as we're in agreement with that, then I can get electrical numbers, and then the rest of it should be ready to go fairly quickly here.
So end of next week, maybe, kind of thing?
Yeah, that should be reasonable.
Council meeting.
Awesome. Yeah.
I have some historical numbers, but I just want to do some checking because I've heard some very large swings in material pricing right now have happened in different areas. So I want to do some confirmation before I give that out.
Question on the backup generator. Are you guys looking at a Kohler unit, or I know it's gonna be tendered out, but the reason I'm mentioning Kohler is Pritchard Engineering out of Winnipeg. They service a lot of those, or actually for backup generators for municipal wells. They do a lot of servicing in the area. They got contracts with various municipalities. They come and run them, test them, and put them through a preventive maintenance. So I'm just wondering what brand you were talking or thinking about there, Ryan.
So typically that would be more of a performance-based spec, and then it would be up to the contractor would select what they want. If you felt like, or council felt like they wanted to specify a name, a brand, we can do that. But normally in the tendering world, we'll specify what the equipment is, the size of it, and then it would be left up to the contractor, because various contractors will get better pricing with their suppliers that they work with, right? So
the reason I'm bringing that up, I work at the Cenovus ethanol plant in Minnedosa. Right outside my door is a probably a couple hundred horsepower unit, and just down the street in their Kohlers. And you can say the company from Winnipeg, and you wouldn't expect anybody from this municipality, Public Works or the water treatment guy, to check over a generator. That's a specialized, and what I'm hearing, they come to Western Manitoba every 2-3 months to basically make sure they operate.
yeah, we can discuss that with our electrical engineer for sure, and look into how we might want to approach that, and discuss with them the pricing differences typically between the various manufacturers if we want to investigate that further.
And service agreement. Make sure you put that in there to obtain a service agreement from the supplier, because that will tell you right now, if there's no service available from supplier A and supplier B has it, that might be enough to.
Like the units that are sitting on the, I don't know, transfer station or pump station, when you go to Winnipeg, at the water lines, whatever, they're all the same size and weight.
That's the Kohler.
You know, yeah,
Yeah.
and they probably have some around here too, for Elton or,
You do.
and you might as well hook up with them, or like you said, it's already here.
Okay, so in that, are you looking for, I'm just thinking out loud, to include within the tender a service agreement, include like a 5-year contract or something as part of that, or you just want to make sure that there's the option available?
Option, like Kurt just mentioned, when he travels from here to Winnipeg, you see a lot of these units on the side.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, you wouldn't expect a municipal employee to go trip a 50 kilowatt diesel generator if it doesn't start. So this company, Pritchard Engineering, there might be other ones out there. I just want to make sure whatever model is being proposed, to make sure there's a recognized service company that does this. And you can put your feeler out to Pritchard Engineering. They do the Kohler ones.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm not pushing for them. I'm just saying, just because that unit will have to be serviced.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. We'll discuss that further with our electrical engineer. I'm thinking about that system. I think that pretty much wraps up, or that's kind of an update of that project. Like I say, we're 99% complete. I think basically our contract was to provide the design and a cost estimate, and then you guys go back to the table to figure out how to get it implemented, and then be ready for tender through services board. And maybe that's a question that we'll have to sort out a little bit with Donna and the services board, as the tendering and the construction administration as well, because we haven't been involved in that, but I know there's been some discussions of having us kind of look after the contract administration side of things and construction as well.
That needs to be discussed. I mean, you guys designed it, and I've got no problem with Water Service Board, but to me, think we need to reach out to Water Service Board and see if it doesn't make sense, our engineer just managing right through tendering and all that.
Mr. Chairman, does the Water Service Board have different rates for installation? Like they might pay for piping, but not for heads or like the different things, if I remember correctly. Like depends what we're asking for in their grants.
The grants would just be based on a percentage of the construction cost of whatever the tendered value comes back at. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So once it goes out for tender, then it'll be a percentage of your ultimate construction cost is their funding of it. So that's probably the next discussion maybe that Donna has to have with Travis. I think at Services Board is kind of the, once we've got the cost estimate done, then when is it going to go out for tender and what does that look like, tendering and construction oversight? And then I think you guys were talking about wanting to also have a resident meeting to have us kind of be available to answer any questions and present to them.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not sure how we can do that. You know, I'm a little old school and I love to do things face to face. We can do it by Zoom as well. You know, that'll be a decision that I think once you guys figure out the financial aspects of the project next, then we can look at when we could set something up, and depending on COVID conditions and everything else, how we could handle that.
That sounds fair.
Yeah, I think Zoom is the best though.
Yeah, Zoom likely would be the way to do it, to give everybody the opportunity.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Some are more comfortable with being in public and others aren't. So yeah, it'd probably be better to do it virtual so that everybody has the same opportunity.
Well, if everybody showed interest and wanted to show up, I don't think that we can legally, under the rules right now, have enough room in council chambers to do it. So now you're looking at renting a hall, and you know, the ones that don't want to come, then you might not have ability for the internet to put it on Zoom and stuff like that. So I think what, at this particular point anyway, unless something changes, is that we would be doing it the same as what we're doing today.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So that's kind of the status of that piece of work. I guess coupled with that, I got in my notes here too, and I don't recall the gentleman's name that was inquiring last time we did this public kind of consultation regarding the license for the Meadowbrook Lagoon. There was questions as to whether it was proper or if it was in hand. We have received from them, from Manitoba Conservation and Climate, the final copy of the license. So it is, that piece has been completed. It's waiting on, it's been sent this week to Meadowbrook ownership to sign it so that it's officially executed, but it is for the expansion that includes the piece that we expanded for Chater residents to operate. So from provincial level and licensing of the lagoon, that piece is all in place now as well. So as soon as I have that signed copy, it will get posted to the public registry, but I'll provide that to Donna as well. And then if she wants to forward to, was it Evan? Was that his name maybe?
Yes.
Sean.
Oh, Sean.
Sean, right. That would, hopefully answer his concerns that he had, that it was, that license wasn't in place. It's been pending, coming for a long time. They've had some changeover, and every time I follow up, they just keep telling me, yes, it's fine, you can use it. And we just have to finish the paperwork. So we finally got the paperwork in place. So that piece. That I think wraps up all my updates for Chater. And I'm not sure what discussions or what's knowledge you want to have on the public forum, like Spruce Woods Lagoon discussion.
Mr. Chair, I think we need an update. I mean, there's nothing secret. I mean, just what, basically explain it to the people, Dan, what you did, in my opinion, Mr. Chairperson, what Burns Mandel consultant did, the approximate location and the test samples, and what you see and what you basically think moving forward is. I think that's fair.
Bill, yeah, including the second round of sampling. As that looks more favorably of doable than the first one. Like the first one was sort of low quality, gravel content and so on. The second one is, it looks more preferable.
Sure. So maybe just by way of intro to anybody that may be listening or watching live tonight, Burns Mandel was retained by Council Cornwallis to investigate the feasibility of a wastewater lagoon. And I don't have in front of me the exact location or the legal land description. I don't know, Ryan, if you can pull up a map of that while I'm thinking off the top of my head. But so we initially last year, 2000, late in the year of 2020 in December, location was selected as a potential lagoon location. So we did some limited test pits to evaluate whether there was suitable clay in that on that piece of property. And at that time, I think we dug 8 test pits to roughly 3 meters in depth, and we collected some samples of the underlying clay and submitted it to accredited laboratory in Winnipeg for particle size analysis, because that typically tells us whether a material will be suitable or not. It came back marginal, kind of right on the line of whether it could be remolded and recompacted and form a permeable membrane liner for a lagoon. So from that, and there was also questions from that initial test pitting as to whether there was sufficient volume of clay available, because there was a fairly thick overburden on top of that clay that ranged from like 1 meter to 1.75 meters of kind of primarily gravel, because it's in, you know, in your area where there's lots of aggregate. So based on that initial first glance, it looked like it may be suitable, but we needed to do some additional testing to confirm that. So in 2021, we worked with a geotechnical subconsultant of ours out of Winnipeg that came out and did further test pitting. We expanded the area of where the test pits were dug to quantify and determine the thickness of the overburden and the thickness of the clay layer, so we could get a better handle on the volume of clay that would be available. So from that work, we determined that there would be suitable volume of clay that could be utilized as a clay liner. They also took some additional samples and returned those to the laboratory, did particle size analysis, and it was very similar to the first samples that were taken. So the next step in figuring out whether it would work would be to do a recompacted and remolded hydraulic conductivity testing. So what that is they'll take the samples and they'll compact it with the same effort that you would during construction. So normally a clay line lagoon is compacted to 95% proctor. So it's 95% density. That's typical. Because of this material was marginal, I had them compact it to 98%, which is a little bit more compactive effort, and the contractors wouldn't normally be used to doing that, but it can be done. So we recompacted 2 samples to 98% and then did a hydraulic conductivity test on them. And what that is, it's installed into an apparatus, and essentially it measures the rate at which water can migrate through that clay sample. And from a provincial regulation requirement, the value you're looking for is 1 × 10⁻⁷ centimeters per second. So the two samples came out at one passed and one failed, the ones that were done. The one that did pass marginally passed. So I just got that report today, actually, and I sent it to Donna, about an hour ago. So I'm sure she hasn't reviewed it or had a chance maybe to forward it on to you guys as well. But unfortunately, the geotechnical consultant recommends that it's not utilized for a clay liner. They feel that it would be a high risk to try to proceed with utilizing that material, because there's a chance that during construction you could do all the work, come back and do your hydraulic connectivity testing and it not pass. So, and then which case then you're at putting a plastic liner in it. So this, because of the depth of the clay to get to it, would it would be, it's a pretty high risk to proceed on that basis. So it's recommended not to utilize that material as a clay liner. So that's the ultimate, I guess, answer that we're looking for, or that we have. Not ideally, not what we wanted to hear, but I would rather know about it now than to try and build it and then find out we can't use it. So with that, in pursuing further options for the Spruce Woods Lagoon, you could still, if you're able to purchase that property at a reasonable value, you could still build the lagoon there. It would be a plastic lined lagoon or an HDP lined lagoon versus a clay lined lagoon. But if that's where you would end up going, I would probably look for land closer. There may be some abandoned or exhausted pits that could be repurposed into a lagoon closer to Spruce Woods as an option. I haven't looked into what other land might be available, but there could be something else closer, because we were looking at going, what was that, about eight miles west of Spruce Woods?
Mr. Chairperson, then look, there's a southeast of the magazine, where the discharge line is of the Shiloh Lagoon. There's sort of a wetland, rush and so on, whatever, that we looked at it like years back, that could be used for our outfall line. It's close to the river, and Donna has it up. You can point it out on a map, whatever. Like, I don't know if that's big enough or not, but that's as close, like way closer. It's probably about, I don't know, 3 miles or something like that from Magazine Roads. That would be the other location, beside the one we're looking at.
Yeah. And is it something that you feel is a clay source there too?
No, I don't think so, but it's what do you call it, government surplus. Like
Okay.
a base, more or less, but you got not know what I use for it. It used to be the former transponder side or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. So that would maybe be another option to investigate. Like, it just appears that any of the lands, and everybody that knows the Shiloh area, it's sands and gravels, right? And that, around the whole area, you just have to look at a map and you see all the irrigation pivots, and you know what you're dealing with is light soils. So this being sort of the best option that we exhausted, that there may have been a potential clay source, but I was always concerned it is a long ways away from Spruce Woods, so there'd be some significant cost of getting your force main out to there. If it looks like it's going to be a HDP lined lagoon, then it would make more sense to look for a closer location to Spruce Woods.
Mr. Chairman, would you have sort of a ballpark figure, let's say up to 5,000 or even $100,000 dollar figure for a clay liner, or an approximately, I don't know, it's hard to say because we don't know how many repairs there are, but just a ballpark, let's say 1.5 million for a liner, whatever. When I remember when we first looked at it at that time, it was, I think, about 2 or 2.5 million, like for Spruce Woods proper. And one look at that, prices going up, whatever since then. That's 20 years ago.
Yeah, and the liner price has been significantly impacted in the last year with all the economic conditions and supply chain, and there's been one of the factories that produces the resin, there's been problems. So the prices of those materials, and the last job I did this past spring, they were getting hit every month with a 25% increase. So right now it's really hard to predict that. We did the sizing of the lagoon that we looked at for where this clay lagoon was going to go. We actually did send that to Titan Environmental, who does most of the installs of these in Manitoba, and they have given us a budget price. I'd have to dig up that in my files, but we do have a budget price of for a liner for the size that we would need for spruce woods.
Mr. Chairperson, Dan, just for the audience out there, I mean, obviously it's disappointing, nobody's fault. At least we did our engineering at that location is not suitable. I like Councilor Wasberg idea, let's move back now if there's land available. And that's been the challenge for the last 20 years. We just couldn't find the land when this popped up. At least we had source to go. But can you tell the audience, yes, a clay liner or a synthetic liner would be more expensive, but approximately in percentage, we don't need it. Like how much the same size lagoon, if you had suitable clay,
Difference in price.
yeah, the price difference, is it 5%, 10%, 20, 30, just so. And then we don't even
Ballpark
write.
figure, no pressure, Dan.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is higher though, correct?
It's higher for sure, yes.
Yeah.
But it's a difficult number to give you because, for instance, that land we were looking at, we had to strip off a meter plus of material to get to the clay. So
Yeah.
a project like that's going to be fairly expensive. Whereas if you're building this on clay and all you have to do is strip topsoil and dig a hole, well, then there's a lot bigger difference. But if you're digging out and getting rid of 1 meter to 2 meters of material, that's just garbage. You're spending a lot of money moving that material. In this particular case, I felt like getting rid of that overburden, there was value because it's granular still, so you could process it, and it's not maybe necessarily going to be a strict throwaway cost, but there would be cost to it. I think Ryan, do you remember off the top of your head, like for instance, like Meadowbrook, the difference, were looking at a difference of about, I'm thinking it was like 500,000 or 600,000 difference to go from clay to HDP liner, because on that job, I actually designed both and gave the option. Contractors bid both. So sometimes we'll do that.
I'd like to keep it on the table with the perspective of looking for a different piece of property, just because of what we're thinking in the future for Douglas and Chater expansions.
The benefit of going with an HDP liner in that area is that you don't have to move a lot of dirt. You can just go in, say you need to take 2 feet off of the surface, which is enough to create your outside berm. That's all you have to do. So you don't have to move a lot of dirt if you're out in that area, and then you're just paying to put a liner in, right?
But you understand what I'm saying, Dan, is that we've had some interest and some questions about keeping it in the back of our minds when we're moving forward with that particular project, that Douglas is at the stage in years, the same as what the old part of Chater was. Their systems are going to start to fail in who knows exactly a date, but it's in the back of their minds, right? Elton's council. And the same with if Chater on the east side branches out, we need to be able to have some answers and accommodate that if we're going to move forward. And I don't want to condemn that property 110%. I'd like to keep that in the back of our pocket as an option. You know what I mean? With maybe do a little bit more research on a price on a liner, and we can maybe nail down with the landowner now that we know our parameters on the clay and whatnot on a cost of that property, so that we have a better idea on what our next step possibly could be. but still look for something different as well in a different area. But I want to try and keep it in the realm of thinking with us all, that it's in a position on the map that those other individuals we're not forgetting about.
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and that particular property, like I said, I have the quote from Titan to put a liner in. Like, it wouldn't be a huge effort for us to put together like a Class C cost estimate for a lagoon to go there. It just that I know the force main price will be fairly high, whereas I think if you're gonna pay to put a liner in, I would say, okay, let's explore some other options for land that might be a little bit closer. That's something that would have to be investigated. But I know you've had a difficult time engaging any property owners between Spruce Woods and that location that were interested in potentially selling property. But, I know there's always lots of aggregate extraction in that area. There may be something where there's an area that's been mined out already that hasn't been considered, or nobody's thought that that's a potential option. But if we're going to put in a liner, it could be.
that's something to consider, definitely. But we have to take into a lot of consideration about the residents that live around those quarries.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because there is a buffer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like he knows
Yeah.
that.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairperson, yeah, I'm in agreement with what you're saying, but I do believe if we could get Dan to give administration a proposal, what would it cost to give this council a Class 3 to strip it and to put a liner in? It's obviously when the liner cost, whether it's close to Spruce Woods, or we could look at that other property. I just don't want to be caught up with this land transaction like it has for the last 20 years.
Exactly.
If the feds, the piece of property that Councillor Wasserberg is talking about are willing, and it could be a suitable site and a quick transaction for a reasonable amount of money, I'm all for it. But I just don't want to see it another 3, 5, 10-year delay. I think we, and I'm in total agreement with Reeve Curtis there, that location, if those 60 some lots ever get developed on the east side of Chater, or Chater goes west, it does pose a nice option to go there and like it's almost halfway between Spruce Woods and Chater, so it could serve one site. I mean, we gotta leave all options open, but it has to be the most economical.
Well, with Douglas, it's a no-brainer for it as well, because it's not our municipality.
So just some good options on the table here, but we just basically need to come up with a plan. Okay, what's our next step?
Yeah.
Just can't leave it sitting there. We just gotta move it along.
Keep the momentum.
Yeah, keep the momentum going. Good, good word there by the CEO.
So I can put together a proposal for you if you like, for us to just give you a Class C cost estimate. We'd make some assumptions as to how much stripping there's going to be and how much earth we'd have to move, but at least you've got a budget number to work towards, or to think about, or that gives you a magnitude of what the project might be.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman,
I think that's the next step then, really.
Okay.
and Mr. Chairman, we do have a landowner that we've met twice with. He is more than open to. Yeah, so that to me is the first step. We can have all the Class 3 estimates. If you don't have land, you're now fighting years. Here we have a potential additional. So yeah, put everything on the table and give us your best guess. Now, the way they plow these lines in, Dan, maybe we'll be surprised at 7 miles we have to go. Well, we won't know until you
Put the number on the
put the
table.
number on the table.
That's true.
Yeah, the only part will get tricky will be as you get closer to that location, you get into those rocks, the boulders and that, then you're digging. So there'd be some challenges there, but yeah, we
Bigger
can.
horsepower.
Yeah,
There's lots of
We can,
these days.
yeah, we can do something for you there.
Okay,
What
what else have you got?
else do I got in my?
I got something.
I guess while we're on the topic of, and this will be right out of left field maybe for you guys, but on the topic of lagoons, and I guess I've worked for the municipality for a number of years, so I've done a lot of work in various areas, but one area has always been Grand Valley Road, and I know from seeing some of the minutes of your previous meetings that you've got a couple of pending subdivisions in Grand Valley. I'm of the opinion that you might want to also explore a feasibility study for lagoon and for water for the Grand Valley and seek some funding through Services Board at this time. I know those are concerns to the residents and rightfully so. I think that needs to be explored. I've always felt like, I know you have a non-potable well source right down off Grand Valley. It should be right in the Assiniboine aquifer, the Deep Valley aquifer, that would have lots of water. You'd have to confirm that, but I'm of the opinion that a water plant down there that could potentially service the entire Grand Valley area would be a huge bonus, and I think it would be something that would be feasible. I would recommend you consider thinking about a feasibility study for that area and see if there's any funding available to conduct it. That likely would alleviate a lot of the existing residents' concerns with wells and more development. That's something that keeps coming up. There's quite a bit of interest, obviously, in that area. So I think that's something to consider from water. Wastewater as well, too. You're getting a fairly dense population all through Grand Valley, and everybody's on fields. It's also something, too, that you may want to at some point start thinking about a lagoon for servicing the Grand Valley area and residents, too. It's not within your secondary plan, or I don't think there was any thought put into it at the time, but it would be worth probably an inquiry through Services Board if there's any funding available that you could consider that.
The only thing that we'd have to be mindful or do a small study on that well that's on the south side of Grand Valley Road is, under my impression, I want to say that when Brandon turns on their two wells that are between Brandon and Turtle Crossing, it affects that well somewhat, but I'm not sure. We don't have numbers. It's whether it's hearsay or not, I'm not sure, but we would have to be mindful of that before we nailed it down to a definite sort of, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would be part of any investigation
Okay.
into potential water source. There is your number one is raw water supply, and make sure that it's available and that it's adequate, right? So that would be one of the things that we typically work with freeze and drillers. They would come out, they would put in some test wells, monitoring wells, and they would do a hydrogeotechnical study of that aquifer to ensure that there's adequate water capacity there. You also have to look into allocation to make sure that you'd be able to get allocation from the province to withdraw from that aquifer as well. But that would be, because I know there's what has previously been talk about piping it over or piping it from Chater. I think it would be a lot more economical and beneficial to have a second plant basically supplying that area. Municipalities getting to the point where you already have a part-time, I think, operator with the Chater plant. Long-term wise, if you ever end up getting a lagoon or two, you're probably gonna need a person that's going to operate your water and wastewater systems within the municipality. So operating a smaller plant like that's not a huge time commitment, but it needs somebody there on a daily basis taking a few readings. So
Yep.
Mr. Chairperson, Dan, you mentioned like lagoon water. We're going into budget here. How long would it take you to give council or administration a proposal? I'm all for, we have to do something out there. But for now, the two needs out there, I think council has heard it in the last 2 months. We got to get a road and a water study. The lagoon, I don't want to take it off the table, but I don't think we can put it all together. Could you provide, Donna, and that you've already gave us two, but I think this time around it's we're going to move ahead, and I'm confident this council will put money aside to upgrade Gray Road, that proposal, just revisited, forward to Donna for budgeting purposes, and also what it would cost to do a water, exactly what you said there, that water feasibility study. I don't want to forget about the lagoon. I think the lagoon, I think once we get Gray Road, there's just too much on the table. Gray Road, to me, should be our number one priority. Then groundwater, like a water feasibility study. Then once we move forward, I think the lagoon would probably be number 3. We got to prioritize. Yeah, so if you can get that for budgeting purposes, that'd be great.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what you just asked me for was to review that old Gray Road proposal that you had and update that for investigating the safety aspects of Gray Road and making improvements to it. Is that?
That is correct. And we, in the last month or 2 months, the residents out there, we gave them an opportunity on 2 occasions. And so is council. We're really concerned about what to do. We're not going to fix it. I think I'm going to say we're going to improve it. To say we go out there and fix it, we can make some improvements. And I think you had something, a proposal for us. So what I'd like to do is for you to revisit it. And then maybe once you submit it, we can invite you for another Zoom evening meeting to explain to the residents what that proposal will give us at the end once you're completed that work.
Okay.
I don't want to mix the 2 together. There has to be a Gray Road study and a water feasibility study.
Okay. So the Gray Road proposal is pretty easy because I've written that a couple times already. So I just have to pull it up and find and update it so I can get you that for your budget deliberations. Water feasibility study. When do you need it by, Donna?
Yesterday.
Well, I guess as soon as we can get it for budget purposes, but then I'll also, in the meantime, get a hold of Travis to see if there's any money at Water Services Board we can tap into.
Yeah, okay. I'll work on something. That one will take me a little longer because I'll have to deal with the hydrogeotechnical people and look at the groundwater side of things.
Would that be Friesen that you would reach out to as well?
Yeah, because Friesen, Jeff has done so much work. He does the city's stuff and he does the work for Coke and Connexus for all their production. So he knows that groundwater probably. He's the best in the province, so that's who I would go to for sure.
Mr. Chairman, Dan, I don't want to rush you. I mean, I say we need a number. It needs to be thorough. Gray Road, I think, like I say, that's going to be an easy one because you did it twice. You just have to review it and resubmit. But the water one, I want to make sure that you're looking at the best options. In my opinion, if you don't have it by the mid-April budget season or budget date, I don't see it as a problem, but we need to give, I think council, we need a deadline. Let's say, even if we give you till the end of 2022, I think that would be fair. Let's just look at all the best option. You're going to need some time to think and submit a proposal to us.
Yeah, I'll get you something on that. I want to talk to Jeff a little bit about how he would go about it, and how long it'll take us to come up with a number for you. And then Donna, if you can engage Travis at the same time and find out if there's any funding available, at least you know where you guys stand, and then we can kind of circle back and talk about it. But like I said, I think I'm happy to hear that because I think it's an important thing for you guys to consider for the Grand Valley area, because it is a concern. There's going to be more land, more developers that are going to keep knocking on your door for that area because it is a nice area. If we can provide a reliable water source, I think that would be a big bonus for the municipality for further future growth in the area. So, and then I'll table the lagoon discussion for another year.
Yeah, I think it's too much. I mean, we got so many projects on the go. We got to prioritize them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're not going to do it. I think if we do Gray Road, then the water, then obviously the lagoon will be the third thing on the priority list.
Okay. The only other item I kind of had on my list is I had a couple of inquiries or with some of that development that is proposed in Grand Valley. And I had a question is typically I've always reviewed that early on for council and provided some feedback on those ones. I haven't done that, which is fine. The one that I looked at last week when it came to my attention for the one just north of Kukaroots, that development that we did. And I think that I saw in your minutes that you guys approved that subdivision. I guess I got a couple of concerns, or I don't know where it should get caught, but without having done a review, your secondary plan included some streets or some roads and traffic. And it seems like that was not taken into account maybe in that design. And also I had allowed for a future right-of-way going north from that Kukaroots cul-de-sac to tie into that other piece of property, because that followed more of the traffic flow and the road network of what your secondary plan included. I'm just maybe questioning how come, or how did that get missed, or maybe it didn't get missed and it was thought about, or is it a step somewhere in the approval process that, maybe it should have been caught, or was it reviewed or looked at in light of the secondary plan for Grand Valley?
Normally, we wouldn't even see any of the drawings for any of the major works until after they don't normally spend that money, as you know, up front. We usually get that when they've actually signed the development agreement, so we can start asking for those kinds of expenses, right? So.
But you normally would get the development, like the concept, to show you we
The
want to.
drawing, yeah, the concept drawing, yeah.
Yeah, so I think at that point, I guess I would like to think it would be worth engaging our services to look at and comment on maybe for your benefit. Because from what I saw in there, there's going to be potential problems with drainage too, because of that class 4 wetlands that we drained through. It looks like they're filling that in order to accomplish. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I just foresaw a couple of challenges, and then I know that if you've approved it, I'm not sure if you're in no man's land, or how do you go back and then make changes?
Yeah, but it won't be approved, right? It's only conditionally approved. They have to meet conditions within there. And one of those conditions is definitely that development agreement, where we'll get to see all of those drawings.
Yeah.
We normally don't even see them until, well, you don't.
Until it's to that point.
Yeah, but Mr. Chair.
But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree with that going, because to me, that developer, he just wants to comment, and maybe with two different engineers looking at it, I see as it's gonna cost the developer that's probably already looking at some money, and if we're demanding changes, I personally agree what Dan is saying is basically get that right before
The changes should be upfront.
exactly the recommendation and the work
Because
together.
from the engineering perspective, I think it would be it's easier if they knew what your kind of desires were right up front. If you said, well, no, this is a natural drain through here, so we're not going to permit you to disturb it. Well, then they can design around that, but otherwise they're sort of designing what they want, so I think it could happen earlier on and then make it smoother throughout the process for everybody, for them and for you guys.
A better direction. Yeah.
And like, because we don't actually get those subdivision drawings until the application comes to the council table, we never see anything until we actually get it, right? Like, none of that comes to us ahead of time. It goes to the province now. So there's there's limited time frame in there now with that changes that came to the act as well. Because once the subdivision hits our table, that's when the 90 days comes in. So if there's changes, those changes need to be included in the application. You know where I'm.
Mr. Chippers, I see what Donna is saying. I think what I see here for us, and the Rice subdivision was a prime example. We it gets put on the table, or even the Keller one. It gets put on the table. At this point, that's where we need our engineer to help us, send it to him for his comments before we make our decision. Then we could almost make a part of the resolution that we will defer it until.
But I guess what I think Donna is trying to get across is that when it hits our table or they apply for it, that's when that 90 days start.
Yeah, the
So
clock's ticking.
The clock's ticking.
by the
so-
time we get it at our level, it could be 30 days in already. So now
Yeah,
you're trying to make that contractor or that developer meet your conditions, and he's got 60 days to get all that, or we have to get all that approved,
but then that drawing that he submitted with his application,
is a rough sketch.
well, is the one that comes with, right?
Right.
That's his SAM drawing. So,
Yeah.
so at what point is it that you should see that? Before
they-
we get it?
Do they normally contact you, most developers, before they do anything and say, we're thinking about doing this? And then, no, okay, because that's normally, because that's typically, you know, if I'm on the other side, that's normally what I do, is I usually will try to meet with council or with planning and saying, this is what we want to do. Do you guys have any concerns? Before we actually do the SAM and the
See,
official
Some,
application.
well, and sometimes we do, like that one large developer that we met with out there. That was the first one that we'd actually ever had a call from that actually talked about those kinds of questions ahead of time
Yeah.
before it came to the council table. So,
Yeah, and that's a lot nicer when that happens, because you can
Yeah.
try to head off a few of those concerns before it gets.
but quite often, it'll be a phone call that'll say, I'm looking for information about a subdivision. We automatically send them down to
Community plan.
community planning because
Yeah.
it's not handled here, but
Okay.
that's where an issue would arise, I guess, that.
There's always that aspect that we have to have an unbiased opinion when it comes to council too.
Well, yeah, but that's where
Yeah.
you wouldn't be involved.
Right.
Where I'm saying is, at what point do you need to see that to pinpoint if there is a concern?
Yeah.
Because generally, the subdivision wouldn't even have gotten to the stage where they spent a ton of money perhaps on drawings, on, you know, on drainage plan, that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know where a developer is in all of that prior to when it comes. Because as you know, sometimes it takes us months and months and months to get that kind of stuff for a development agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, like I just look in particular, that one by Kook Roots was that when I look at it, it would have been nice to have had some input right at the start and said, well, if this developer set aside a piece of property here to have a future road tie into it, which would shorten the length of that cul-de-sac so that it meets the requirements of planning and it's more in conformance with your secondary plan. So none of that really happened. So none of that was taken in. I don't think it's been considered as part of that design. So I guess I just see it as unfortunate. It could be it could work better and be smoother, and at the end of the day have better development in that area.
It might have been a lot easier, Dan, if our contractors and our developers work together as well. You know, to put a plan on the table, what each one of them is doing. Sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had that opportunity actually, and we missed it, and that's a learning. Because that application came to us in November. Then we deferred it, that one particular, till the next meeting.
Yes.
That's where we could, we're not rejecting it, we're just saying, okay, we want to hear from the public. At that point, we could pass a resolution to hand it over to a municipal engineer for his comments and input. You have 30 days in, because I think we went from November basic to December. to approve it. Or was it
Yeah,
December?
but
I forget
now,
what the timeline
yeah, and
was.
now it's when the actual document hits my desk. So if it comes to me the day after a council meeting, then basically it's already been sitting for 30 days before you even see it for the very first time, right? So it's all
Yeah.
in when that document comes to our office from community
See, they
planning.
changed that part of the act,
Yeah,
the municipal act.
Yeah, it's,
And it makes it hard for us to be
So.
unbiased opinion and work within that timeline.
Yeah, but getting aside from that, if we get the document from the community planning office and the SAM is already attached as its potential layout, and you see it and you see concerns on council's behalf with the actual layout of the design, because I don't know how that all happens at community planning when they've already submitted that document for comment. Now, the one thing that might happen, which I would have to confirm, because we don't get it here in the office for comment, but I don't know if the planning district gets it in their office for comment. And if they don't, maybe we can make that happen. But
Request.
and at that point, then maybe our district can send the document for comment on our behalf.
Mr. Chairperson, actually, Donna took the words right out of my mouth. I can now see how that can happen. Community planning needs to be advised, but we would have to approach Elton. And you work for Elton, Dan, right?
I have done quite a bit in the past, yeah.
Okay, if the planning department could agree on, let's say, the same engineer.
Yep.
That community planning could be advised that to send that document to
Yeah,
Burns Riddell
Yep.
for comments, and his comments would be directed.
well, then it
To-
would go
yeah.
back to community
Yes,
planning,
I think
and then
that
it would be caught before it
Exactly.
even
The
hits,
timeline starts.
before they submit it to council.
That would, Mr. Chairperson, I think that's what we need to work on, the community, would they accept that? And Elton, I'm sure, has maybe subdivisions too, that.
Yeah, like I don't know what they would want to do,
Yeah,
but for our sake, whether Devon can actually include your name for any subdivision that happens within the arm of Cornwallis automatically, or whether we can have it come through planning so that you get a copy of it on our
To get
behalf.
reviewed, yeah.
Prior to, like, when it's in the comment stage, rather than coming to the council
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairperson.
That's something we'll check into, Dan, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, because I think we need to do our due diligence on and be mindful of people downstream and what we're dealing with.
And it would put this council in a much, at least me, in a much more comfortable position. We want growth.
Yeah.
And I'm particularly looking at the Rice application that council rejected it. And it was the right decision for this particular moment because of Gray Road and the water concerns out there. You could have probably given us a report, and we wouldn't have had to basically refer to 2 meetings and call a special meetings. If we get it from professional, it's so much easier. We're not making a decision. It's the engineer advising us. Folks, that's what you should do. I like that.
Yeah.
I think we should do whatever we can.
I think we'll.
Put that extra step in there.
Further and see if we can nail down, get it so that it's gonna work better.
You know, Mr. Chairperson, for Barb to flag it and
Yep.
Yeah.
to send it out.
Yeah.
Because we don't
I was just trying to think of ways to make it smoother.
yeah, no, that, I
We
think
totally
could-
appreciate the way you're
Yeah, and
thinking.
I think we could make that work at the commenting stage, Daniel, and then it would be caught prior to it even getting to councils. And then they would be able to see your comments as they come through with that whole scenario.
Yeah. So I'll leave it with that and let you guys kind
Yeah.
of think about it or talk about it. I just brought it up because they both kind of come to my attention here in the last few weeks, and I started thinking, wonder how could that be any different to get some feedback earlier on.
It might also change some of the comments from the planning district, like from Barb, whatever, when she looks at your comments and catches some of the pitfalls, whatever, that you normally don't see if you point them out.
Yeah,
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairperson, actually, that's a great point there. I mean, the engineer should almost be the first one before MTS and highways and all that. Get the people that do that for a living, get their first comment, because you're right. Maybe 5 other departments might have a totally different perspective once to see the engineers.
Yeah.
No, good
Are
point.
you looking for a retainer fee for all this, Daniel, or what?
I'm not looking for more
I'm
things to do.
just kind of curious because I don't like surprises.
Just cleaning up odds and ends.
You know, but I still appreciate you bringing stuff like this forward because I think it makes us all stronger.
Yeah, well, I think, I've worked with you guys for a long time and I try to, if I see something that I think can improve, I'm gonna mention it at least, and then you guys can think about it.
And we appreciate that.
So,
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
There's always room for improvement and we're only human, right?
Always growing.
all right. I think that's everything I have on my list in my book today. So I guess.
We appreciate your time.
Yeah, and follow up, I'm gonna deal with that genset Sam had asked for. Spruce Woods, I'm gonna give you a proposal for a Class C cost estimate. I'm gonna give you a proposal for those gray road safety improvements and a feasibility study for a potential water treatment plant for Grand Valley.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of stuff to do then.
Yeah.
Okay,
New year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
all right, have a good evening.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
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 Okay, so I have a proposed motion there to accept the delegation if you're,
We need a seconder.
I'll make a motion. No,
Yeah.
it's okay, we need a motion. Yeah.
and Kurt.
Kurt, anybody who's to speak to that motion?
No, please, yes, report.
I will call for the question then. All in favor?
I think we make some good steps forward.
Okay, next item then under new business is a personnel issue, and there is a motion to go in camera for this discussion.
Did we have the other two items?
I put them underneath this.
Oh, it's after, okay,
Yeah.
I thought maybe we could deal with everything and go in camera and say camera. No, that's what I was,
Well, you might want to come out of camera and do a
Oh,
motion
okay,
too. I'm
that's
not
good
sure
then.
what you're gonna do.
I'll make the motion to go into camera.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
Anybody who should speak to that motion? I'll call for the question. All in favor?
just give me 1 second here.
Click.